Chapter 2 Sisters. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Lucy Burgoyne. Sisters by Ada Cambridge. Chapter 2. Sincerely he believed, when he was on his feet again, that his life was wrecked forever. He did suffer from insomnia, even with his splendid sea-seasoned constitution, for months, which proved the poignant insistency of his grief, making thinking a disease instead of a healthy function. He performed his duties mechanically, rigidly, like an engine stoked from the outside. He no longer had pleasure or interest in them. The flavour was gone from life. It had become a necessary burden, to be borne as best he could. At one time he even questioned the right of the moral law to ask him to bear it, under the circumstances. He used to look at the blue water beneath him, and longed to be beneath it, sharing the fate of his loved and lost. He did not want to live without her. He wanted to die, at 21. At 23 he was a man again, physically and mentally sound, doing all reverence to the memory of his dead wife, a flawless angel in the retrospect, while finding natural solace in the company of living women who were also young and fair. The living women were much in evidence from the first. Nothing but the sea could keep them from trying to comfort him. A big fellow with a square, hard face, and a fist to fell an ox. That was just the kind of man to call for coddling, apart from the fact that he was a widower, had been married for as long as 5 weeks altogether, with his heart in his wife's grave, and with that pathetic adjunct, a baby. When he would consent to recognise the world of affairs again, and the claims of youth and manhood against it, he found, but of course there is no need to specify all the things he found. One was a batch of invitations awaiting each arrival of his ship in port, first 2, then 4, then half a dozen women's notes, begging him to come to as many hospitable houses for change and rest, and to bring the baby. He could not bring the baby, for reasons which he did not honestly present, as a rule, but which he reluctantly disclosed to Alice Urquhart one night at 5 Creeks. Alice had written one of the 6 notes. They were 6 because it was Christmas time, for she was the sister of Jim Urquhart, who was the friend of an ex-squatter down on his luck through droughts, and reduced to balancing ledgers in a Melbourne office, who was the friend of one of those doctors of Williamstown whose skill had brought Guthrie Carey to life after he had been drowned. Jim, having made the acquaintance of the latter, took his sister to inspect the ship, and to have tea in the mate's cabin. Hence the return visit, which the captain, who loved his chief officer, stretched a point to sanction. There were at 5 Creek Station, besides Jim, a Mrs. Urquhart and several children, but Alice, the eldest of the family, was the general manager of her household, ever struggling with her brother, who maintained it, to lift it and herself out of the ruts in which her father had left it stuck. She was close on 30, sad to say, and there were 3 girls below her, and nothing happened from year to year, and she was weary of the monotony. "Do come and see us," she wrote to Guthrie Carey, one of the finest looking men she had ever known, not expecting the splendid Claud Dalzell. "Do come and see us, and bring the baby. Country air will do it good, and the house is full of nurses for it." He went himself, out of friendship for Jim, and after dinner sat in the verandah with Alice, and explained why he had not brought the baby. Jim had then gone off to doctor a sick horse, and Mrs. Urquhart was putting children to bed. "I believe," Alice rallied him, "that you thought it infra dig." He protested earnestly that she was wrong. No, it was not that. Not that. Ignorant of the details of the tragedy of his life, she scented a mystery about the child. Was it, perhaps, not right in its head, she wondered, or afflicted with a hare lip? "Son or daughter?" she ventured cautiously. "A boy," said Guthrie Carey, still with that unfatherly air of discontent. "Sometimes I wish it was a girl. She could look after me by and by. I could have her trained to be my housekeeper, and sew my buttons on that sort of thing, you know." "You would have to wait a long time," said Alice, turning admiring eyes upon his comely person, noting with regret that he could not be within several years of her own age. "It is quite a young infant, isn't it?" "Yes, that is, let me see, 15 months and a little over." "Yes, it will be 15 months on Thursday since he lost his mother." Time had done so much for him that he could now speak of her to a stranger, and he was then only a few weeks old. "Poor, poor little thing!" sighed Alice Urquhart. It was, by the way, a particularly sympathetic night, soft, still, solitary, with a full moon. They both felt it. Besides, he had had an excellent dinner. Five Creeks was poor, but it lived well. "Oh," laughed the guest, without merriment in his laugh, "you needn't waste pity on him, Miss Urquhart. He's all right. Rolls in fat. Never ailed a thing in his life. Might take the prize at a baby show. So they tell me. I have not seen him myself for a good while." "What? Why, he's in Melbourne, isn't he?" "Not far out." "And you haven't been home to see him?" "I haven't got a home. I gave it up when, you know, I knew I should never be there, and you can't leave a house and a young child to servants. The little time that I did try to carry on by myself, I made a dismal mess of it. The woman I trusted to," he meant Mrs Hardacre, "started feeding it with thick arrowroot. She'd have killed it to a certainty." "Indeed, yes. The idea! But it is incredible what some fools of women can do in the way of mismanaging a baby." The remark implied expert knowledge on the speaker's part. "A mother of children herself, too," said Guthrie reflectively, and looking it, "if ever a woman did. While a girl, who'd never had any, took to the job like a duck to water. Knew just what to do, and how to do it. I will say that for her. Instinct," Miss Urquhart remarked to the man in the moon, who seemed to survey the couple with his tongue in his cheek. "I'm sure, though I say it, that I could give many a mother points myself." "I've no doubt you could. I heard somebody say the other day that mothers are born, not made. Very true, too. You see it in the little girls nursing their dolls. I don't think anything of a she child that doesn't want a doll as soon as it can speak. I always loved them," declared Alice casually. He leaned forward to look at a spider's web that the silver light had just touched, making it shine out from its background of dark leaves and veranda post. And there was danger of rupture to the delicate thread of the topic that was weaving so charming a conversation. Wherefore the young lady hastened to inquire what had become of his little son. "I suppose," she said, "he is with his mother's people." Slowly resuming his attitude of repose, the guest considered the question. "No, oh, not exactly. With a friend of his mother's. Not her family.